Dr. Atchison here, and we're talking about our Chapter 8, Informational Processing, Core Knowledge Approaches, and Theory of Mind. This is our last lecture in the series, Theory of Mind. So theory of mind is children's understanding of the mental world. It's how they understand their own thoughts. It's how they understand other people's thoughts. And it's how they come to understand that their thoughts are different necessarily than their behavior. It's how they come to understand that their thoughts and their desires and their intentions are different from someone else's thoughts and desires and intention, and that the mental world can be very, very different from one person to another in different situations and in different environments. The two main ways that we study this is through false belief tasks, which is the primary way we talk about this and the kind of studies that we do about it. It's the most studied of the tasks, and we'll talk about that in some detail. And the other one is the appearance-reality distinction task, and that's the other way that we can study this theory of mind and how thinking about their differences between their thoughts and the reality, physical reality, and making those distinctions. The other part of theory of mind is that we know that learning in social context and pretend play is a really important so that children can get the cognitive skills necessary to be able to really engage in theory of mind. So Vygotsky would love this. The rest of the previous two parts of the chapter were kind of information processing and core knowledge, and they were kind of on either ends of the spectrum. Theory of mind definitely has some from both. Your book really talks about it a lot from the information processing perspective, and that is primarily how I'll approach it too. But there is some overlap with the core knowledge as well. So again, primarily from the information processing perspective, theory of mind, again, is just thinking about thought. This is kind of the timeline that we understand about this. And again, because this is from the information processing perspective, this is not saying that there's some sort of innate knowledge. This is saying that they're learning this through social interaction, through gains in cognitive abilities, that this is not domain specific, that this is domain general. And so this is the timeline that the research supports from the information processing perspective. At 18 months, children start to understand that others can have a different desire and have different perspectives as their own. The best way, one of the most fun ways we've seen this is that Repicoli and Gopnik study. Now, this is where we have that overlap between the two perspectives. Again, core knowledge perspectives are going to say, oh no, see, that's evidence of core knowledge. And information processing people are going to say, no, that's evidence of information processing. These are 18-month-olds. They've had, 18 months of experience with social interactions and seeing different perspectives, and that this is a learned situation. So again, make sure you've watched that broccoli cracker video from Repicoli and Gopnik. Either it's posted on D2L or it's also on the YouTube playlist for development. The other example of this is Tomasello's research. He has a video that's posted on both of those sites too, called What's Novel is the piece of the video we'll watch. And it shows how, again, somebody else has a different perspective than themselves at 18 months. At 2 to 3, children are starting to grasp the distinction between mental life and behavior, that these things are separate, that they're not necessarily the same thing, that I can think one thing and I can feel one thing, and that's maybe not the way that I'm behaving. Or I can, mommy can think one thing and behave another way. And we see that a lot. As adults, we do that a lot, that our mental life and our behaviors are not usually completely synced up. And so children start to notice that and start to grasp the distinction between that and themselves and others. From around 3 to 4, they increasingly refer to their own thoughts and their own beliefs because they understand that you don't inherently know what they're thinking. So they're going to increasingly refer to that, oh, well, I thought this was happening, and explain their thinking, start to be able to explain their thinking and explain their beliefs. At 4, they start to realize that their desires and beliefs actually can determine their behavior. So again, 3 to 4, they're seeing them as distinct, but it's not till 4 that they really say, oh, these desires and beliefs can really be the cause for the effect of my behavior. And they also start to realize around 4 that others can have different knowledge than our own. And we'll see this evidenced in those false belief tasks. At around 6, they can really understand that mental representations can be completely different than physical reality. That these things really cannot be linked at all. So again, 2 to 3, they're starting to tease those two things apart. By 6, it's down. Those are completely separate entities, physical reality versus what they think of something, and those are completely separate. And by 7, they really have second order beliefs, which we'll walk through in one of the following slides. So again, the primary way and the most studied way that we've looked at this is through the false belief task. The video is posted both on D2L and on the YouTube playlist. Watch it. It's great. Alison Gopnik walks through the different perspectives and the different ages. And this is a really well documented finding. And so we have a timeline of performance and age, and it's really pretty stable across socioeconomic status and various cultures, okay? There are some differences, but we see a pretty stable timeline. So here's what we see at about 30 months of age. We have pretty poor performance on false belief. So we have the percent correct on the y-axis and the age in months on the x-axis. And again, we're only getting about 10% correct at 30 months. So we're less than 3 there. At 40 months, we're up to 40% correct. That's not quite 4. 48 months would be 4. By 50 months, so a little over than 4, we're at 60% correct. By 70 months, we're up to 82-ish% correct. And by 90 months, we're up to basically 100%. So again, we really see this timeline as very stable across various socioeconomic statuses, across various cultures, and that's going to give it a lot of external validity. So it's going to be able to say that this is really a true finding. It's a valid finding, a true finding, because we can look at this in different cultures and with different groups of people, and we find the same thing. The other way that we study this is appearance reality distinction tasks. So these, here's a video of a little girl going through these appearance reality distinction tasks. And when you're watching this, so how old are you?
I'm 6.
What color is that car?
Red.
Okay, now put this on top. Now, what color is that car really and truly? I covered it up, but what color is that car really and truly?
Red.
What?
Red.
It's still red? It's not blue?
No, it's not blue.
Why?
Because this is blue and this makes it look blue.
Oh, okay. Good job. Okay, so this was a 6-year-old, and you see she still answered red. This is the task that's described in your textbook. Where can that appearance be different than reality? Okay, and a 3-year-old, once you put that blue film on across the top, would probably say it's blue. Or purple. They probably wouldn't say red anymore, even though you said really and truly. And I even tried to trip her up a little bit here, and I said, are you sure it's not blue or purple? And she stuck to her guns, and yes, this is red. Because again, she could understand, and she told you, just because you put this on top of it and this is blue, the car didn't change, this is blue. So again, 6-year-olds typically pass this no problem and can explain why the appearance and reality are different. But again, this is evidence of that detachment between physical reality and the mental representation. What they're getting in terms of, bottom-up processing in terms of sensory information is that car is purplish or bluish, not red. But again, that physical reality, what it looks like is different. That mental representation of what it looks like is different than what it really is. That those things are distinct. Second order beliefs are beliefs about another person's belief. Okay, so this is not necessarily their belief versus someone else's. This is what someone believes someone else will do. So this requires a lot of perspective taking. So at 7 years old, we start to see that children are passing these second order false belief tasks. And this is really important because it really aids in perspective taking. So to walk you through this, picture A says, Jason has a letter from a friend. Lisa wants to read the letter, but Jason doesn't want her to. Jason puts the letter under his pillow. Jason leaves his room to help his mother. While Jason is gone, Lisa takes the letter and reads it. Jason returns and watches Lisa, but Lisa doesn't see Jason. Then Lisa puts the letter in Jason's desk. The question is, where does Lisa think Jason would look for the letter? You and I know that Jason knows it's in the desk, but Lisa doesn't know that Jason knows it's in the desk. So younger children would say, oh, they would look, because we know that Jason, that Lisa doesn't know that. We would say, oh, Lisa would think Jason would look in his desk because they can see that. However, 7-year-old children usually can get these right and say, no, Lisa thinks Jason will look under his pillow because she doesn't know that he saw her put it in the desk. So they're able to answer this question from the perspective of Lisa, even though they have a different perspective, one that's slightly more similar to Jason's. They're able to kind of step out of themselves, not only look at it from their perspective, look at it from Jason's perspective, and look at it from Lisa's perspective and answer that question correctly at 7. These kinds of tasks and the crayon candle task and the false belief video that you watch and the parents' reality tasks are really, again, influenced from the information processing perspective by the environment, by social interaction, by cognitive change. So these are the things that we, and again, I primarily fall into this information processing perspective in terms of development. So this is the kind of approach that we as information processing theorists or people who adhere to that theory really take for perspective. So factors that are involved in theory of mind development, one of the main ones we see is language. Language ability really predicts the performance on a false belief task. It requires complex language skills. To be able to think through those both mentally and to be able to speak about those things. So we see children who have more complex language skills are going to be more likely to pass those false belief tasks earlier than a child that doesn't have that complex language skill. So we really see that language is a huge, huge predictor in this. Now, this is going to be one of those places that core knowledge perspective is going to say, see, this could be innate because language is such a predictor. So again, the back and forth, no decision has been made as to which one is most correct in terms of our understanding of development. Other factors we see, cognitive abilities. Again, this is where the information processors are going to say, information processing people are going to say, see, this is not domain specific. If cognitive abilities and language abilities are predictive of false belief tasks, then these are not domain specific. These are going to be more domain general kinds of changes. And again, that core knowledge perspective is very domain specific. We see gains in inhibition, predictive of false belief task mastery. Inhibition is the ability to know something and say, but inhibit that knowledge, okay? So when you open that box of crayons and it's really candles in there, you have to inhibit that you know what's really in there and look at it from Snoopy's perspective. So again, we see children who have gains in inhibition, again, are predictive of this false belief task mastery. And because, again, they're having to suppress that irrelevant response of what they know, that there's really candles in that box. Another thing that we see is predictive is make-believe play. And again, this is going to be really reflective of Vygotsky's theory in that mental state talk is going to be an important role. Again, when you're doing make-believe play, a lot of times you'll hear children say, I'm angry, and they'll talk about their mental states, or I'm feeling angry, or let's pretend that I was thinking this and you did this. they're walking through that, what their mental state is and how those are going to dictate behaviors. Because again, that affords, this make-believe play is affording children the opportunity to experience these things. We see that mental state talk is really related to performance on the false belief task, where again, that really good input increases our output. Again, we see social experiences being really predictive as well. We see children who are more securely attached to their mothers. And again, we'll talk about attachment in later chapters, but you've covered it in intro, that infants that are securely attached to their mothers exhibit this, what we call mind-mindedness. And it's where they can describe their children in terms of mental states. And so hearing this, and understanding how your child is feeling and expressing that verbally for your child to hear is important, that you know how that child is feeling and talking about it, and they can compare that to how they are feeling. And again, this is positively related to success on this task as well, because again, they're getting experience with talking about mental states and how mental states can predict behavior. Oh, she just did that because she's tired. That mental state of exhaustion is predictive of that fit she just threw. Oh, she's sad, and so she doesn't want to talk today. Again, describing those mental states can really give children opportunities to see how those can predict behavior and how those can be different from someone else's mental state. Again, social experiences, we see children that have older siblings perform better on false belief tasks as well. Again, the better the input, the better the output from that information processing perspective. Where again, children that have older siblings are going to have more opportunities to socially engage. And from Vygotsky's point of view, to socially engage with a more advanced peer. Someone who is more knowledgeable. So there's going to give them opportunities for scaffolding. So again, we see better performance on the false belief task. We also see that other factors that are involved is children on the autism spectrum either can have some delays, severe delays, or if they're really high up on the diagnostic criterion in terms of spectrum, can have actually absent theory of mind development. So again, if this was a completely innate thing, we wouldn't necessarily have quite as much differences. So again, this supports this idea that it has to do with that capability of learning these things, and because of the differences in autistic individuals' brains, that they are not as interested in those things, and so they're not as likely to learn those kinds of things that are predictive of theory of mind. So this ends our Chapter 8 discussion on theory of mind. Thanks.